I want to thank you for joining us. I'm Ken Evans, the Dean of the Michael F. Price College of Business. We're pleased so many of you could be here today for the third installment of the Distinguished Speaker Series. I'd like to note that we have many alumni and friends here today, and we appreciate your support of Price College. We're pleased you could be in attendance. As Dean of Price College of Business, I'm honored to lead an outstanding group of students, faculty, and staff. This is an exciting time at the University of Oklahoma and Price College. We recently received a recognition for our entrepreneurship program. It's ranked 8th nationally by Princeton Review and Entrepreneurship Magazine. The University of Oklahoma was the only university in the Big 12 to be ranked in the top 20 in this listing. We've also added 8 new faculty members this past year who have varied national and international reputations, and they bring an extensive array of backgrounds and expertise to our delivery of our curriculum, and an exciting opportunity for our students to interact with this great group of new colleagues. Finally, thanks to the generous gift from today's speaker and his wife Linda, our MBA program will now offer Dunham scholars the incredible opportunity to study in London, England, also at the London School of Economics, and intern in the London business and financial sector. These students will return with a distinct advantage in understanding the depth and complexities of the increasing global environment. Price College of Business has a rich tradition of success due in part to our outstanding alumni base. Our alumni make significant contributions in business sectors across the nation and globe, and no one illustrates this level of accomplishment and influence better than today's speaker. Archie W. Dunham, likes to be known as Archie, alumnus of Price College of Business and former chairman of ConocoPhillips. We're greatly honored to have Mr. Dunham here with us today, and someone of his caliber, to share his thoughts about the global energy environment as well as the global economy. Archie, a native of Ada, Oklahoma, received his BS in Geological Engineering from the University of Oklahoma's College of Engineering and his MBA from Price College of Business. Mr. Dunham served in the U.S. Marine Corps from 1960 to 1964, reaching the rank of captain. After finishing his graduate work in 1966, Mr. Dunham began his lifelong career with Conoco, starting as an associate engineer. In 1983, Mr. Dunham was elected an officer of Conoco, and he became executive vice president for North America in 1985. In 1987, he was asked to transfer to Conoco's parent corporation, DuPont, where he rose to the position of senior vice president for DuPont Polymers. He returned to Conoco in Houston in 1992 and was named CEO in 1996. In 2002, Mr. Dunham was at the helm during the $15.6 billion merger of Conoco and Phillips Petroleum and was named chairman of the new company. He retired from ConocoPhillips in September 2004. Mr. Dunham and his wife Linda have been staunch supporters of the University of Oklahoma, and they've made significant contributions across our campus. And Archie's role as chairman and CEO of ConocoPhillips, I can say without doubt that the Conoco footprint is seen throughout the University of Oklahoma campus, and we owe a great deal of debt of gratitude to Archie and his role in making that happen. As the energy industry is undoubtedly a force behind the global marketplace, we will continue to be observant of the significant influence it has in the business sector, both in Oklahoma as well as the global community. There's no one I can think of better to offer reflections on that than Mr. Dunham here today. Today's format's a little bit different. We're actually calling this a fireside chat. You may wonder where in the world is the fireplace, where's the fire? But the format is one where we're permitting both Archie and Mr. Steve Long, the director of our Price College of Business Energy Management Program, the opportunity to engage in a more informal kind of conversation. Let me take a few moments to comment a bit about Steve. Last spring, our highly unique and internationally acclaimed energy management program celebrated its 50th anniversary. With over 600 alumni in an intimate setting in the Memorial Union, we gathered together with faculty, friends, and family associated with the energy management program and celebrated our incredible accomplishments. This is the first program of its kind in the world. The energy management program received the Most Innovative Achievement Award by the Southwest Business Teams Association in 2000 and is the largest among the 5 such programs in the U.S. and Canada. Steve's 30 years of experience in the energy industry has enabled him to formulate some excellent questions to draw upon in querying Mr. Dunham's Oklahoma roots and professional experience. Let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Archie Dunham.
Well, I thought we would just kind of start our little fireside chat by, first, Archie, just a few questions, maybe a little bit personal about your background. How in the world does a little old boy from Ada, Oklahoma, become the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and what kind of things maybe did you take from your upbringing in Oklahoma that helped create your success at Conoco?
And you started right off, right tough.
That's why it's a fireside chat.
Yeah,
fire.
And also, I think sometime here we're going to give y'all a chance to ask questions too, so you can be thinking about whatever's on your mind. If the interviewer here doesn't get me too flustered, but growing up in Oklahoma, it was clearly, I think, a blessing. Both Linda and I grew up in small town America in Ada, Oklahoma. And I told a group at lunch today, I think we started going together when she was 13 and I was 15. And we've been married 48 years, so we have a lot to be thankful for. But I think the values that you grow up with in this state, the love of God, the love of country, and the love of family, were important, really important values that had an impact on both, I think, Linda and me as we traveled the world and as my career progressed. And so I think clearly those values had an impact. I think just the fact that we have a work ethic in this part of the country that I think is unique versus maybe on both coasts, and with no disrespect to people that come from the coast. But I think we have a work ethic around, always doing your best, the quantity of work, the quality of your work. I've been talking to some of the young people today and trying to hammer the importance of that first 6 months on the job. But I think all those values probably contributed to my success, and those attributes contributed to my success. As I told you at the beginning, if you ask me a straight question, you're going to get a real straight answer. You might not like the answer, but I also believe that my personal faith, the fact that I tried to seek God's wisdom and His direction in my career path and each of my decisions, certainly had an impact on my career, and I'm thankful for that.
Dean Evans gave us a little bit of your bio and background. You came to the University of Oklahoma and you got your engineering degree, petroleum engineering degree in 1960, served in the military for 4 years, and then you came back to OU and got your MBA. Could maybe you share with us some of your takeaways from your days at Oklahoma?
Days at OU. Hard work. Any of y'all understand that? Especially, really through my undergraduate and graduate. I mean, I came to OU not prepared. I came from small town America where we didn't have the math classes and the science classes that many of my peers enjoyed at Oklahoma City and Tulsa and some of the larger schools in the state. So I was kind of at a disadvantage, which means I had to work really hard. And so I got over involved initially. I was in the Pride of Oklahoma, and I joined the Marine Corps drill team the first day we were here, I think, and then a lot of other activities, and realized after my first semester that perhaps I should change my schedule and start studying a little bit more, and fortunately I did. But, I think, just being here at a big university from a small town and having the interactions with kids from all over the world. I mean, this was the 1950s, 1956 to 1960, and so we had a lot of kids here from the various Middle East countries and from Asia, especially focusing in the oil industry, which is what I was interested in. And so it was really a time of exploration and of really broadening your thinking by just being exposed to these various kids from around the world at the university, and that was a great learning experience, I think. My Marine Corps experience was wonderful. In those days, everyone had to serve in the military, and so I made the decision as a freshman that I wanted to be in the Naval ROTC program here at the university, and then I chose the Marine Corps the last 2 years because I thought they were the best, and I wanted to be a part of the Marine Corps, and loved my 4 years in the Marine Corps. And I guess you learn a lot of lessons on leadership in the military. And the one I remember, are there any Marines here? You know what the 5 P's are? There are actually 6 P's, right? 6 P's, I'll tell you what 5 of them are. But anyways, prior planning prevents poor performance. And for all of you young people, I think if you just remember the 5 P's, prior planning prevents poor performance. You learn the basics of organization. Every day when I went to work at ConocoPhillips, I knew exactly what the most critical things that I was going to try to accomplish that day. I knew what they were. I had them written down every day before I went to work. Now, it didn't mean I couldn't change those priorities. If something happened in the world that meant I needed to change and be flexible, I became flexible. But otherwise, I accomplished those things every day. And so it was all part of the planning process, an organization, a time management process that I learned over time. But much of that came from the Marine Corps.
When you graduated from OU, how did you kind of transition from here to Conoco?
I also should mention I love the MBA program. I never really, seeing the Dean of Engineering here, I really didn't enjoy engineering. It was really hard. But I thought it was the best degree in the world at the time, and so that's why I wanted to pursue it. And I don't think that anyone from Ada, Oklahoma, had ever had an engineering degree. And so I said, that's the best degree in the world. PE, GE, the best degree in the world, so that's what I'm going to go after. And no one in my family had ever even attended college. And so I got the degree, and then I went into the Marine Corps, and I started reading economics. And so then I started taking economic classes, and I thought, God, this is wonderful. You got such a global perspective. You understand how the world works, economically and financially. And so I fell in love with economics, and then I said, okay, I need to get an MBA degree. And so I came back to OU, got it, and Linda and I, we had 2 kids, we starved to death, and went to school and got our degree. But the lessons that I learned, in MBA school, the economic evaluation, and all that kind of economic work, I put to work nearly on the first day I was on the job at Conoco. The transition was very easy. I was in a very stressful management development program where we hired maybe 15 kids from around the nation every year, the best and brightest that we could hire, and then we fired 10 of them at the end of the year. So we kept the top 5, but nearly without exception, those people that survived the program, if they didn't, if they weren't CEOs or and executive vice presidents, at Conoco, they became CEOs and executive vice presidents in the industry because we had such an outstanding management development program. But, the basic engineering that I learned here, I used immediately. Just the basic engineering. The companies taught us what they wanted us to know when we got there as far as engineering was concerned. But nearly all of my MBA training, I immediately put to use and used it throughout my career.
And Conoco was really world famous for its management development program. So when you graduated from OU, you didn't start in an engineering job, right? You started right in their management development program.
I went into the management. I was going to go to work for IBM. This was 1966. IBM was a young company, an upstart company, high-tech, computers, the future. And I hadn't accepted a job with IBM, but I pretty much in my mind had accepted a job with IBM. And then this young Conoco vice president came up and told me he offered me a steak dinner. And as Neil knows, I'm real high on beef. And we were starving to death. And so I had a nice steak dinner on Conoco. And then we went to Houston and interviewed, and I got excited when I looked at the people they had hired and those that had survived the management development program, and then looked, what year did they join the company, the program, where were they today, where were they in the company? I realized, hey, they're serious. If you can survive the management development program, you've got a good shot, at a position of leadership within a very quick period of time, and that's exactly what happened.
Could you talk a little bit about when Conoco comes to campus in this period of time? What characteristics, what they were looking for in a student that allowed you to enter into their development program?
Well, as I told some of the young people today, I mean, every company has a lot more candidates, a lot more applicants, a lot more students, than they have job opportunities. And so nearly regardless of the market conditions, they always have an oversupply of candidates. And so they can be very selective in what they're looking for. And I know when I was a recruiter, we also had our young HiPOT managers would be the recruiters that would come back to the university, because we felt like that was, a young HiPOT could have a better shot at attracting a young student that was a potential HiPOT than some guy that was, or some lady that was kind of plateaued and not very exciting. And so I had a set of questions that I would always ask. And those questions, I mean, there weren't any accidents in those questions. They were all designed to test the poise or the confidence or the integrity or the work experience of that candidate. And there was a whole series of questions, and I worked very hard over many years to develop and hone those so that I could have a better chance at getting the truth from that student. And as I told some of the students today, it's really important in the interview process that you be totally honest, because the interviewer is just looking for an opportunity to cull you and to reject you. And the other thing is that you're always going to be impressed as an interviewer if the interviewee knows something about your company. And so you need to take especially today, you can go online. I mean, you can probably find out even something about the background of the person who's interviewing you in today's world online. And, you can kind of act like you're interested in what he or she's doing. And that probably
whether you are or not.
Yeah, whether you are or not. And that gives you a lot better chance, of impressing the person that's doing the interview. And also learn about the company. What are the strategies? What's the vision of the company? Where, they work in 20 countries or 50 countries. What kind of experience have they had in Russia or Venezuela or wherever it is? And have a conversation and act smart. And if you do that, I think you've got a much higher probability of getting that opportunity to go to Houston or go to New York City or wherever it is that they invite you back to headquarters. And then that's another process. You're going to go through 5 or 6 interviews. And in our case, we had a blackball system. And if 5 of our superstars interviewed you and one of them thought there was a flaw in character or a flaw in integrity or you weren't a good leader, or you weren't poised, or you couldn't verbally communicate, or if you got flustered, whatever, and they're trying to get you in that state, then you would be rejected. And so the interview process on campus is critical, but more critical is the interview process when you go back to the lab or to the plant or to the headquarters of the company. And there aren't any questions asked by accident, even sometimes in casual conversation. Somebody's trying to find out some information, and so you got to be on your toes. You got to be poised. You got to be truthful in all of your responses.
Can you maybe share what some of your questions?
No, I can't.
I was wondering about that. During your tenure when you were the CEO at Conoco almost year in, year out was ranked as one of the best corporate cultures to work at. The fun places. How do you create a corporate culture when you have the short-term needs and the pressure of shareholders? You got the long-term perspective of your employees and kind of that natural tension there.
Well, every CEO is challenged to perform on a quarterly basis, and my philosophy was that was important. And I was going to do my very best to exceed expectations. But more importantly, I was going to make sure that as a company we did what was right long term. And I felt philosophically that if the management team and the board always made the correct strategic decisions, the correct long-term decisions, then that the short term would take care of itself. And the long-term decisions are in the best interest of the employees, because it grows the company and creates wealth for the shareholders and for all the employees in the company. And so that was the kind of focus that I tried to keep Conoco and ConocoPhillips moving in that direction. And I think, by and large, we were successful. And, I think if you get caught up in the quarterly calls with the investment community, and that's all you're really concerned about, or if that's paramount in your thinking, that you're going to make some incorrect decisions, and you're going to make some incorrect long-term decisions because you're focusing too much on the quarter. And most companies, the investments are based on long-term forecasts. And in our business, in the oil and gas business, we're looking at long-term crude price and long-term natural gas price. And I'm sure that even when oil was at $147 a barrel, that there wasn't one boardroom of the major energy companies that had a long-term crude forecast that was higher than $60 a barrel. And so, they're making long-term decisions based on what they think the crude price is going to be and the gas price is going to be. And if it's $75, if it's $150, that's wonderful. We'll take it. But we're not going to assume that those kind of crazy prices are going to be there forever.
Could you share with the group maybe some during your tenure at Conoco, one of your major disappointments or a lesson learned? Armchair quarterbacking. What were you talking about? The White House.
Oh yeah. Okay. I guess on a personal basis, my career was progressing very nicely, and in 1973, I joined the company in '66. So in 1973, I'd been with the company 7 years. I was a young manager. I was getting stock options. I was really thinking things were great, and the company said, we want to nominate you to be a White House Fellow. Now, probably most of you don't know what the White House Fellowship Program is, but every year the nation selects, there's a commission, a White House commission that the president appoints, and the commission selects about 15 people a year from around 15,000 nominations to work in Washington, D.C. Some of you work at the National Security Council, some works, in the White House, and others work for each of the cabinet secretaries. So it's a tremendous opportunity. So I was really thrilled, and I thought, this is really fantastic. And so I went through I spent hours studying for this interview process that was going to take place. So you were going to go to Dallas, and in those days we had regional commissions as well as the national commission. Today we just have a national commission, but and these were very high level, highly respected. Like Marcus from Lehman Marcus, he was on the panel that interviewed me. Judge Sarah Hughes, the one that swore in Lyndon Johnson after Kennedy's assassination. But people like that, CEOs of major companies, and there was about 6 people on the commission, on the regional commission, and man, I studied every current topic possible. Things changed a whole lot, like foreign policy and abortion and the typical issues, that you're going to be asked about. And I went to the interview in Dallas, and man, I thought I hit a home run, and man, I really felt good. About 2 weeks later, I'm notified that I came in second. I was just devastated. I just knew that I had hit a home run, and that I was going to be working in the White House. And as it turns out, it's probably a blessing because it was the Nixon White House, and and I was so patriotic. I probably would have been involved in Watergate, go to prison or something, because the president told me to do something. So it was probably a blessing in disguise. But anyway, so I wasn't selected, and so that was a real disappointment. But there's kind of things kind of turned out right at the end, and I found out after I had retired. So now this is 34 years later. I was having lunch with a member of the commission panel, and he said, I need to tell you something. He said you were selected to be the White House Fellow, but the chairman of the commission was Judge Sarah Hughes, and she said that she thought, based on And all I can think of is that somewhere during the interview, I may have shared a little of my faith, my personal faith. And she was offended by that. But based on that brief encounter, she decided that I was chauvinistic. And so she overruled the panel, and I didn't become a White House fellow. I didn't know that for 34 years. But the funny thing that happened is, 2 years ago, President Bush called and said, we'd like you to be on the White House Fellowship Commission. And so now I'm a White House Fellowship Commissioner, so all you can apply. And I'll probably have to excuse myself if you're from Oklahoma. But it's a great program, and it's a very active program that our country has. And it's nonpartisan. There's no politics. So, we have Republicans on the commission and Democrats on the commission, and we try to pick the best and brightest in our nation, and it's amazing. We interview the final 50 applicants or nominations, and in a very long 2-day interview process. But we have some phenomenal young people in our country that are most of them are in their 30s, 30 to 33, 30, 35 years old. You have to get out of college and do something before you get nominated. So, but we have some great young people coming up that are going to serve our nation well, I think, into the next century.
Good. You were instrumental in taking Conoco international into some new foreign areas. Could you maybe just share a story about what it's like dealing with a different culture? I'm sure you have a number of stories.
I'll just share a couple.
Yeah, how much time do we have?
A couple of stories. Conoco was the first company to go into Russia. We went into Russia in 1987. We're still the biggest U.S. company in Russia. Of course, we own 22% of Lukoil, ConocoPhillips does, which is a major Russian energy company. But when we got all of our licenses and permits and negotiated our deals with the federal government of Russia, and then they said, well, we need you to go and meet with the local chieftain, the Indian chieftain. Now these are people that live in teepees out in Siberia, kind of like probably the American Alaskan Indians lived 50 years ago or something. And so we got in a Russian helicopter that I was convinced was going to crash before we got there. We flew around the Arctic and finally found this tribe of caribou reindeer herders with their chief. And there was one little teepee in the middle of the area, and the chief is allowed to have his wife with him. And she was a snaggletooth. You felt sorry for these people, but the herders were they couldn't have their wives with them, and so they had to go out for like 60 days and herd these reindeer and caribou. But the chief got to have his wife, and so we landed out in the snow, and they took me over to the teepee, and we had an ABC film crew. This was all on tape, and had an ABC film crew that was just interested in Conoco being in Russia, and so she was with us, and so I had these gifts. I had some rope and knives and hatchets and matches that wouldn't blow out, things that they could use in the Arctic, that would be helpful to him. This is what the chief had asked for me to bring him as a gift. And we didn't need his permission. We had the government's permission, so this was just a courtesy. So I made the presentation, and so after I made the presentation, and we were in this little teepee, really not any bigger than this platform here, and so he reached over in the back of the teepee and he pulled out this quarter section of reindeer. It was just frozen, solid. And he pulls out an old rusty knife, like a paring knife or something, and he carves off a chunk of this frozen reindeer meat, and he sticks the knife in the end of it, and then his wife had a bowl of reindeer blood. And he dipped that reindeer meat in that blood, and he handed it to me. And the cameras are rolling. And so I ate it. And then he gave me a second piece. Now the ABC producer, she ran out of the tent and threw up because she just couldn't believe what was happening. And my executive assistant, she shoved her reindeer meat down her boot. But I had to eat it because the camera was on me. And so the meeting was over, and my mind is worried, just really going around and around. I thought, what have I done? Am I going to have AIDS? I've had this reindeer blood, and so I got back on the company plane, and I called my doctor in Houston. I said, "Can you catch AIDS from reindeer?" He said, "No, you can't." So I felt pretty good. But those are the kind of things, that you hear all the stories about the Middle East, and you eat the pig's eye or the goat eye or whatever, and those things are truth. And if you're the guest of honor, you're kind of expected to do that and to not disrespect your host. The other experience, which was after that, was in the country of Syria, and Conoco was trying to be the first U.S. company to invest in Syria in, I guess, 40 years. And Shell was already there, and Shell was doing everything within their power to keep us out because they wanted Syria to themselves. But there was a big project, a big gas project, right on the border of Syria and Iraq. So I flew to Damascus to meet with President Assad. And this was the father of the current president, Bashar. And so he had a terrible reputation. He was a dictator. Supposedly he'd had 70,000 people killed the previous year in some kind of an uprising. And, he was a strong-willed dictator. And so I was at this hotel in Damascus, and all the local people were running around. They were scared to death, that something was going to go wrong, and that would be the end of them because of the dictator. And finally, at 9:01 or something, their national security advisor runs up and says, "It's time to go. It's time to go." So, I had a 20-minute appointment with the president, and so we jump in the limousine, and the sirens are blowing, and the fire and the police department and the army trucks are all, escorting me up the side of this mountain to where the presidential palace was. And every 100 yards there was a military person, and they were saluting with their rifles, and it was an interesting experience. So we drive up to the front of the palace, and the guy opens the door, and the protocol officer opens the door of my limo, and I look out, and there's about a 50-yard red carpet, and there are bands on the side of the carpet, and soldiers and press. And here I am, just a little kid from Ada, Oklahoma, and I look down at the end of the 50 yards, and there's the president standing there on the steps of the palace. So I try to look as presidential as I can. And I was a Marine, So I walked just as straight as I could and, acknowledge the military and the bands and all that. And I get to the steps, and I was 60 years old at the time, and he was about 75, President Assad. And he greets me, and we go into this palace that the room that we were in was probably about 4 times the size of this room. It was all marble. And at one end of the room, like where the gong is, there was a little table like this one with my water, 2 chairs, and then a 3rd chair for a translator. And so we sat down, and I was all ready, so you got 20 minutes, So, man, I'm going to really tell you about why Conoco should be, the first U.S. company to invest in Syria. And before I got started, he just started asking questions about the company. He was more interested in the value system of our company and the character of our company and the experiences of our company. He could have cared less about the project. He had already read about the project. He wanted to know who we were, what we stood for. And we got into an interesting discussion about Venezuela. Conoco had been the first company into Venezuela. And he asked me all about the project, and I told him what I knew about the project. And then I found out later that he called President Chavez to really ask if I was telling the truth. Was Dunham telling the truth about what they did in Venezuela? And fortunately, Chavez said yes. And And so we ended up getting the project, and I stayed there 4 hours. So a 20-minute meeting became a 4-hour meeting. He wanted to talk about corporate America. He wanted to talk about everything happening in the United States. He wanted to talk about Bush, about Cheney, and about Powell, and about my relationships with them. But mostly he wanted to talk about the character and integrity of our company. What did we stand for? And what we were going to do for his country and for his people. And, and it turned out to be a fabulous experience, one that I did not expect at all. I was expecting to meet a demon, and I met a grandfather that really loved his country and loved his people and wanted to do what was right for his people. So it was a great experience.
We're in a presidential campaign, and obviously energy is just a huge part of the platform of McCain and Obama. You've lived through, this is my final question, and if you out in the audience have questions, could you please scribble it, and we'll kind of go through the questions from the audience. But I think it's just right, since we are so important, almost a week or two away from this critically important presidential campaign. You lived through OPEC crisis 1 and 2. You remember when we were all lined up to get gasoline at the cars, at the gasoline stations. You lived through the regulation period, through the Carter administration, through the deregulation period in the Reagan administration. Here we are 30 years later, still talking about an energy policy, and we're nowhere closer than we were back in the 70s and 80s. What do we need to do to get an energy policy, and your perspective of what's going on in Capitol Hill right now?
Well, I'm not optimistic. I was on an energy commission that was created in 2001, I think, and it was a group of a really diverse group of CEOs. I was the only major company CEO, major oil company CEO, but we had other industry CEOs and automotive company CEOs. We had most of the major environmental groups a part of this very diverse commission. And we met for about 2 years. And every quarter we would meet for 2 or 3 days, and we would just hammer each other, trying to come to a compromise on what the energy policy should be of the United States. And at the end of that time period, we put together a very comprehensive set of recommendations, which basically said we need to drill, we need water, we need wind, we need solar, we need geothermal, we need all the above. But most of all, we need nuclear, and without it, we have no hope. And that was basically what we presented to the President and to the Congress. The President included in the State of the Union address twice, the first 2 years, I think, after we presented it to the President. The Congress, I don't think, read it. And I sadly say that, because I don't think they cared. But we have a serious strategic national security problem. We can no longer be dependent on Middle East oil. But our only hope, in my opinion, is that we have a very aggressive nuclear energy program. I mean, we have that in France, we have it in Germany, we have it in Japan, we have it even in Iran and other parts of the world. We haven't got all the problems solved. We don't have all the waste problems solved. But I think we have enough of it solved that we can get started on a very aggressive program. But it's going to take a federal mandated permitting process. There's not one power company CEO that's going to step out and start the permitting process to build a plant and spend $100 or $200 or $300 million and then write it off because some fringe environmental group somehow stops the process. And so we have to have federal regulation and permitting to make that happen. Now, we need all the wind, we need all the geothermal, all those things together, ex-nuclear, is going to be less than 10% of our global supply in 2025. So that's the problem. The major energy companies aren't opposed to all bring them all on. We need them all. But, we're talking about 87 million barrels a day of energy. That's just the oil side, not the gas. And that cannot be replaced, for another 20 or 30 or 50 years. And so we've got to bridge this problem. And the only way to bridge it is with all the alternatives, all the drilling that we can do, both domestically and internationally. The bill that Congress passed to let companies drill, outside of 50 miles, that was silly. I mean, it was really unbelievable that, reasonably bright people would pass something like that. But it just shows how uninformed they are. And so we need all the above. It's going to take a president to lead us in that direction. It's going to take a Congress to somehow come together and do what's right for the country. I'm not optimistic it's going to happen, sadly. But the alternative is not only are we going to be sucking air on oil, but in a few years we're going to be sucking air on gas. And the natural gas is actually going to be in shorter supply, in my opinion, in 10 or 20 years than oil. And the pipeline that's being built today from Alaska, which my successor finally agreed, I would not agree to do it. And it was Exxon, BP, and ConocoPhillips. And I didn't think it was in the best interest of the shareholders, because it's going to be a $40 to $60 billion project. It's the largest project in the history of our nation. So it means it's going to have a lot of problems. It's going to be a big cost overrun before it's over. And without some kind of a government guarantee, I didn't think it was the right thing for the shareholders to do. So I wouldn't do it. But Governor Palin, bless her heart, she basically forced Exxon and ConocoPhillips and BP to build a pipeline. Now that is wonderful for the nation. It's a great thing for the United States, for the lower 48. It's a great thing for Alaska. It may or may not be a good thing for the shareholders. We'll just have to wait and see if ConocoPhillips and BP and Exxon. But she hammered them, and she got them to do it. And so that's good for the country. Okay, well, what about questions from here? Okay.
What role are the major...
I'm going to stand up too, if you don't mind.
Me?
No, me.
Okay.
You can stand up too if you want to.
What role are the major oil companies taking in these alternate energy sources? Are you active in nuclear and the others?
No.
Or are you not interested in that?
It's not that we're too close to the... It's not that we're not interested. For example, in nuclear, I think most of the major oil companies spent hundreds of millions of dollars in the 70s on uranium and getting ready for nuclear, and we wrote it all off. And wind and solar, those things they're just not meaningful. They're not big enough. And we don't have the core competency in that area either. So, we'll leave that. I mean, there are all kinds of alternative energy startup companies today. I'm on the board of one of them. And, they're getting all their capital from investment capital funds and from hedge funds, people who got more money than, they know what to invest. And so they're looking for these kinds of opportunities, and some of them are going to be home runs. So I don't think you're seeing many of the energy companies really spending money. They'll talk about it, but I don't think they're spending the money. It's just not a good economic project for them.
Archie, some of the folks have actually submitted questions.
Okay,
on
you can ask them.
Let Mel Penn,
Okay.
Director of our Student Support Center, facilitate some of that.
I'm not really sure. I've been accused of maintaining the big mouth as one. I'm really not sure I need the microphone, but starting off, from your journey, looking back, what would you have done differently?
Nothing. I had a wonderful career, and I have a wonderful family, and I don't think anything could have gone much better. Maybe if I'd been CEO longer. But I was 66 anyway, so it was time for me to retire. But seriously, no, I've had a wonderful career and a wonderful family, and I don't think I would have done anything different in, as far as leading Conoco or ConocoPhillips.
Hopefully you had a chance to pick up a card as you walked in, and if you would jot down any questions you might have, Tom Greenlee from our office will be collecting those, and we'll get to just as many of those as we can. The next question, Archie, and this kind of strikes straight to some emotion. Why can't the oil companies do a better job of explaining to the public the challenges you face?
I've just given up on that. Major oil companies are always going to be blamed for high energy prices. And we own hardly none of the retail service stations anymore. And, it's been a bad business for years. And so those have all been divested. And the major oil companies have absolutely no influence on the price at the pump. I mean, we're not allowed by Congress to have any influence on the pump, yet we get the blame for the high oil prices. And so there have been times in our history over the last 40 years when the American Petroleum Institute, spent millions of dollars trying to advertise to improve the image of the energy companies. The only industry, I think, that successfully changed the opinion of the American public toward them was the plastic industry. And actually, I was heading up DuPont Plastic when we did that back in 1990 to 1992. You may remember all the environmentalists were getting upset about the plastic bottles and all this, and we were getting heavily involved in recycling, which was totally very unprofitable for the manufacturers. But we launched a major advertising initiative that showed all the plastic that's used in surgery and all the wonderful things that that plastic does for every one of us in our homes every day. And we were able to turn the public opinion around toward plastic. But that's the only industry that I know of that was successful in launching a major advertising campaign that actually changed the opinion of the American people toward that industry.
Right, thank you. How important will LNG, liquefied natural gas, and GTL, gas to liquids technologies be in the next 10 to 15 years?
Very, very important. And, it's good that we've got the pipeline coming out of Alaska, so that's going to give us a little insurance. That'll keep natural gas prices down a little bit longer than it would have been. But our only hope long term is going to be gas to liquids or LNG, and it's going to come out of the Middle East. It's going to come out of Russia. The interesting thing is what Putin is doing today. I mean, you may have noticed in the paper just in the last few days where Putin's trying to put together a natural gas cartel with Iran, our good friend, and Qatar and Russia. Now, those three countries probably have more natural gas reserves than any other countries in the world. So you can see what would happen there. I mean, Russia is already controlling, through Gazprom, all of the gas supply into Europe and also into the Ukraine and the Caucasus. And so if you let Russia also basically grab control of the Middle East natural gas, well then, they control us. I mean, it's a great decision on the part of Putin strategically. And, he's got to do what's best for his people, and so he's always in, competition with the United States. But, that's why Iran is so important, I think, to the national interest of the United States. They should be a natural ally of the United States. I mean, they're Persians, they're not Arabs. And not the current president in Iran. I mean, he's off the edge. But his predecessor tried very hard to establish improved relations with the United States, and we poked a stick in his eye. And, I'm a big Bush supporter, but I greatly criticize him for that, and I did, personally, and it didn't help. But anyway, that ought to be an ally of the United States. We cannot allow Russia to control gas in the Middle East. Strategically, that would be a huge foreign policy mistake for the United States.
Back to your long career, what was the absolute highlight of your time at ConocoPhillips?
Absolute highlight. I think it was about 5:30 one morning. I was asleep, and the phone rang, and it was the chairman of DuPont, and he said, "Get up and go brush your teeth, and I'm going to call you back in 10 minutes." And I got up and brushed my teeth and shaved, and he called back in 10 minutes, and he said, "I just want you to know that in an hour, 2 hours from now, the board's going to meet, and you're going to be the new CEO of Conoco." So that was a great day.
That was a great day. What effect do you think the low prices at the pump will have on the motivation of Congress to pass something similar to the comprehensive plan you helped to create?
It won't help at all, because we get very complacent as a nation, as a people, and we forget very quickly, and we enjoy the benefits of low energy price, and we just stop worrying about the future. And I would hope $147 crude, will give us a little bit longer memory, and whatever natural gas got up to this last winter and summer. And I mean, I'm not a big fan of Boone Pickens, but because of what he's done to some companies and nearly destroyed some companies. But I'm glad that he's at least creating a dialogue, and maybe that dialogue will force Congress to finally do something, toward energy independence. It's not a quick fix. It's going to take a long time to solve, but we got to get started. And I just don't understand why reasonably bright people can't sit down and come together and create policy that's in the best interest of our country. And I'm sure you're as frustrated as I am.
I'm going to cheat, and I just got the word that we have time for one question we're going to rush into. Who do you see as a great leader in the world today?
Wow. I don't see any great leaders today. Someone asked me today, of all the heads of state people that I'd met, who was the most intimidating, and she's retired. Her name was Margaret Thatcher. And, she was a great lady, a great leader, and really, I think, did a good job of leading the UK and also Europe. She probably could have been elected president of the United States if she'd been an American citizen. But I had great respect for her. I have great respect for President Bush, for his value system, for the fact that he doesn't look at polls, that he does what he thinks is right, but he's not always right. And so I thought when President Bush went into office that he had the best cabinet in the history of our nation. And if you looked at the people that he initially appointed, I mean, how could you have a better cabinet? And I think I blame a lot of the mistakes on our lack of intelligence. I blame that on President Bush 41, who's a good friend of mine, and also on President Clinton. And we got rid of all of our what I call on-the-ground intelligence, and we started relying on electronics and satellites, and we got rid of all of our CIA people on the ground. And we're a great nation, but we're in competition with the world. And I think what Putin's doing today is a good example of, he recognizes that, his responsibility is to the Russian people. And for the first time in their history, they have a government, they have quasi-democracy, they have capitalism, and these are the best of days for Russia. And he's not going to let these great days slip by. And he's going to worry about the future. And that's why he's looking at things like, natural gas cartels, and nationalizing, his energy companies and taking control of a lot of his resources. He's doing what he thinks is in the best interest of Russia. And, they're going to be a great power. China, I mean, you look at China today, they're buying energy companies, they're buying drilling companies, they're buying copper, they're buying zinc, they're buying nickel, they're buying uranium, they're buying oil, they're buying gas reserves all over the world as fast as they can. And that's because between Russia and China, they're 1/3 of the world's population, but they only control 20% of the world's resources. And so, they recognize where they are. And what are we? We got 3% of the resources left. We ought to be out aggressively, buying resources, and not just buying, capturing, negotiating resources that will help us over the next 50 to 100 years. And I don't see us doing that, but we're still the greatest country in the world. We have the best form of government in the world. We're just not perfect. And but we need good leadership, and I just don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it in the presidential races, and I don't see it in Congress, sadly. But anyway, before I leave, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate this university and really all the young people that I've had a chance to interact with today. I believe that you're entering the workforce actually at one of the best times, even though we have a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. It's kind of good sometimes to come in on the bottom. And you may not have a whole lot of competition the first couple of years, because if we have a global recession, the companies are clearly going to be cutting costs, and they do that by cutting people. And so I think if you can get in right now, it's going to be a perfect time. And the markets, if they're not on bottom, they're dadgum close. And I told someone I sold all my energy stocks last spring because I felt like that oil price was way overvalued and that it had peaked, and I missed it by 5%. And just so you know, I started buying back in last week. I think we're within 5% of the bottom. And so my son said, "Are you becoming a day trader, Dad?" I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "But, you know, I may miss the peak a little bit, and I may miss the bottom a little bit, but, you know, this is the greatest country in the world. And the markets are all going to go back up again, the financial markets, and the jobs are all going to come back again. We go through cycles. I mean, some of you that are close to my age, you know, have been through recessions. I've been through a lot of recessions, beginning in 1973. So I know what it's like, but it ends. You know, it's hard to see light at the end of the tunnel. I used to tell my management team, you know, when we did the Conoco IPO, which was the largest IPO in history in 1998, oil went to $9. You know how long ago that was? 10 years ago. $9. You know, and it was, what, 147 this summer. So my point is the world changes. You know, it goes up and it goes down. But we have the privilege of living in the greatest country in the world. We have the best system of government in the world. We have the best opportunity for achievement in the world. I mean, look at all the people that come to our country every year. I mean, I live in Houston most of the year, and I just see example after example of immigrants that come to Houston, and 3 years later, you know, they buy a service station or they buy cleaners, and the whole family works, you know, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. 2 years later, they buy a second one. Then they buy a third one. Where else in the world, you know, can you achieve your dream if you're willing to work hard? And so you've got a great education, so you've got a super start. I want to wish you the best of luck, and the future's going to be fantastic. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to be a graduate of this great university.
These have all been wonderful questions. Thank you so very, very much. Personal question, and it is a bit personal to Archie, from someone who follows you obviously, and from someone who claims to be related to someone you know. Now that you're retired, do you find you have much more time to fish?
No, I don't. I got involved in a couple of big real estate projects in Houston. My timing is not exactly perfect, but it's dadgum close. And so I'm a lot busier than I'd like to be, but I built a ranch in Colorado, and so I get the chance to fish 4 months a year. And if any of you are out in the Blue River Valley, come by and visit. Thanks.
Archie, having you as distinguished speaker, Price College distinguished speaker today is so fitting. We're so proud to call you one of our own. And in memory of this event, we have prepared a plaque for you that captures a bit of your experiences here on campus, and we'd like to share that with you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
I'll forever